Hi guys! In this video, I'm gonna go over everything that I know about the Optima 1 single wood burning machine. So we really love these. I really love this machine and I stand by it so much that I have bought a bunch of them with my 4 favorite nibs, and I have them in bundles on my website. I invested in 10 of these to teach my in-person wood burning classes because I love it so much. It gives a really good first impression burn compared to other cheaper like craft store burners. It's not frustrating to work with. It's really straightforward. It heats up very quickly. It cools down very quickly. The nibs are really good and heavy duty. The machines are heavy duty. And yes, they are a couple $100s, but they are so worth the investment to have good classes where people can really learn, they can really get a good feel for the burner, and they're not frustrated compared to like cheaper craft store kinds of wood burners. Those can be really frustrating to use. They can be chunky to hold, they can be awkward, they usually take multiple minutes to heat up or to cool down, and they can be a really big pain in the butt to just switch out the nibs. But this machine is literally the opposite of everything I just said. I love this machine. That's why I'm doing a video on it. I also wanted to have a video to be able to send to any of our customers who happen to buy our bundle from our website. This might be the first time they're ever wood burning, and I thought that this video would be really good to send along with their purchase so they can watch and learn and get a good feel for their unit before they start wood burning on their own. So here we go. So mine is already plugged in down below underneath my desk. And I don't know if you can see, the light is off right now, but if you flip the switch, it turns on. You get a cable. This plugs in to the front here in this jack. So it will not click, right? But you can feel when it's, well, okay, that made a little bit of a noise, but it doesn't really like snap into place, but you can feel when it's all the way on. If you only plug it in like that, you can see all this space here. That is not fully plugged in. That is way too loose. This needs to be all the way on, okay? So that's the first thing to troubleshoot. If you are getting started and you plug it in and you're getting to burn, you go to wood burn and there's no heat, you need to check this connection. And then this is your heat dial. It goes from 0 all the way to, I guess that would be like 11 because there's 10. So it has a really wide range. I don't actually know the proper like Fahrenheit and Celsius temperatures that are associated with this. It's just kind of a 1 to 10 scale. But if you have char on any of your wood burning nibs, it can literally catch on fire, okay? So you go from nothing, 0 burn, to on fire with flames. You can get very light, delicate, detailed burns, all the way to burnt, black, flaking burn. So I really like that. I love that it has all of the wood burning range. It's not just light burns or just one kind of burn, because there are some units out there where it's just on or off. You can't adjust the temperature at all, so the burn that you get is just the same. So this, I just really love it. It's straightforward. I find myself burning between a 7 and a 9 most often. Usually I'm between a 7 or an 8. If I'm doing something like stippling or I need a really deep dark burn, I will go up to like a 9.5. I rarely burn at a 10, but sometimes I do find myself at a 9.5 for whatever. Usually the lowest that I will find myself is like a 2.5, but I don't do a lot of detailed burn. Usually I'm in this temperature range. Also, on the top of my unit is this little clippy thingy. This was probably not attached to your unit when you get it, but it is just a sticker. It's like a command strip underneath there. and it is pretty heavy duty. I oriented mine, I peeled off the backing, I oriented here, pushed it down, and this clip, so if you push this thingy, or I guess pull it, it releases, and to tighten it up, you just push it down, right? This holds your wood burning nibs, especially if they're hot. I do recommend putting this on the top of your wood burning unit rather than on the side, but you can put it wherever you want, or just not use it at all. Then the 4 wood burning nibs that come with my bundles that I sell on the site are these. So when you are first starting out wood burning with whatever kind of unit, these are the 4 kinds of nibs that I recommend to start playing with. I recommend a blade-like nib. So this is the skew nib. It is number 1. It has this 45-degree angle blade. It's not really a blade, but it's the most like a knife, right? Looking at all of the different kinds of nibs that this company makes, I just call it a blade-like nib. So this is really, really good for line work. It's really good for straight lines. It's good for borders, but you can also get a lot of really fine details by putting it up on the point and using it. You can get really fine little details and dots and dashes. You can do all sorts of stuff with this nib. This, the skew, it is so good at getting into the grain, sinking down, and then just slicing right through it. And it's like slicing through cake. Like, it doesn't matter if it's slicing through the cake layer or the icing layer, it's gonna slice right through it. This is just perfect. It doesn't matter if you're slicing through end grain or slicing through side grain, face grain, long grain. Like, this is gonna give you a consistent, solid line no matter where on your piece of wood that you're burning. I absolutely love this nib, but it is like the complete opposite of a pen or a pencil. It's like trying to write with a blade, right? It's like trying to write with a knife. Like with a pen, you can push and pull it in any direction, right? Well, you can't do that with this. This is like trying to slice. You cannot push this or go at an angle. Like, you have to actually turn and twist the nib in order to change direction. I have had students flip it upside down and wood burn with the blade facing up. You can kind of see this edge here. You can touch that to the surface of the wood, and that gives you a little bit more control. Or you can keep it up on its point, just like when it's up on its point this way. You can keep it up on its point, sink it in, and do your line work or your details that way. When it is your first time wood burning and you're trying something new that you've never done before, this can be tricky, and it is not the favorite, okay? But for me, over time, this is my absolute favorite nib. I just love it so much. I stand by it, and it's really good at what it does, but it's not for everybody. A lot of people do get frustrated with this nib, or they just don't like the way it's coming out. It does take practice, it does take patience. So if you're trying this nib and you absolutely hate it, I'm so sorry. I love this nib. I think it is so good, and that is why I have it in all of my wood burning kits. But everybody will have their preferences on their favorite nibs, which nibs they like, which nibs they don't like, whatever. The next one that comes in the kit is this one, and it is called the burnishing nib. It is number 8, the burnisher. This says that it's good for calligraphy. I've literally never used it for calligraphy. I use it for outlines and textures. It is similar to the skew nib in that the angle of the point is that 45 degrees, but it is completely rounded over, whereas this one is literally like a knife edge. It's razor sharp, it's like a blade. This is not like a blade. And if you start to compare them, if you put them side to side, you can see that this nib is like 4 times as thick as this nib. So this is gonna give you a much thicker, fatter line when you touch down on the wood, whereas this one will give you a very thin, crispy straight line. This is good for straight lines, but because it has that rounded edge, it is more forgiving and you can do curves a lot easier with this nib. Similar to the skew, you can touch down on the wood with the whole face or the whole edge of the nib and drag. You can also put it up on its point and use the point of it to do whatever. I use this to sign my name sometimes. I don't use it for calligraphy. I don't know, but I will use it to like sign a piece of my art on the backside or something. Also, like the skew nib, you can flip it over and use the point that way. And because it has that 45-degree bend there, the point of it right here is really good for like little details. You can do little strokes, you can even do like scribble shading. You can do a lot with this nib, and I definitely recommend that you sit down and just play with all of your nibs on some scrap wood, because you'll be surprised at what you discover in the sense of, you know, textures and line work and all of that. Third one, this is number 19, and I believe I have the medium. It says draws lines, writing, shading, pointillism, and much more. Yeah, this one is very, very universal. It is the most like a pen or a pencil because you can push it and pull it in any direction and get that consistent thickness of a line regardless of the direction that you're going. Yours should be completely round. Mine is a little tapered because it is super old and it has started to lose some of its shape from being polished and things like that. It just gets beat up over the years. But in my classes, most of my students end up loving this nib because they can trace their lines, they can burn, you know, they can do everything with this nib. But me personally, I just do not like this nib for line work. But when you go to burn and do line work with this nib, you will get blobby lines. You won't get a nice, solid, crispy line. It's literally not made for that. This is made to be fluid. So the lines that you get with this nib will be fluid. They will be blobby. They will be thick in some spots, thin in other spots. And that's not really a fault of the nib, because the nib is doing what it's made to do. It's more of a fault of the wood. Wood grain has hard spots and soft spots, and some grain is really, really compacted together, and then other woods have really open grains. If you get wood that has like an open grain structure, when you go to burn, this will literally sink into the wood grain. If you were to burn here, this is the end grain. And so you can see all these little lines, all these little spots. This piece of wood is walnut, and walnut has this open grain structure where the different rings of the wood have compacted areas and open areas. And so in the compacted areas, your nib is less likely to sink into it. But in the open areas where there are these big gaps between the wood grains, your nib is going to sink right into it, and that's what gives you the blobby lines. But this one is also really, really good for textures. I have a couple of different texture things that I've done in the past. I did a skill building workshop that I actually do have available for sale. It is a go at your own pace workshop. I'll have it linked in the description of this video. We go over all kinds of different textures, and a lot of them are made by using this nib. Like it said in the description, you can do pointillism or stippling, and that is where you make a whole bunch of dots to fill in an area. You can turn the heat up on this thing and get really deep, dark, like you can get really deep, dark spots, or you can turn it down, turn the heat down and go faster, and like and you get all these nice little speckles, and you can do a gradient. You can mix them together to get a really cool texture. You can do little swirlies. I really love this for big, bold, like physical textures, not really delicate things. And last but not least is this guy. So this is a shader, and it does exactly what it sounds like it does. It shades. It is bent at a 45-degree angle, and just like the other nibs, you can touch down on the surface of the wood with the entire face of the nib, right? Point it up, tilt it, and shade with just the point of this nib. I've also had students in the past turn it on its side and use it for line work, which is not really my jam. It feels funny to me to do that, and it just doesn't feel as natural as my favorite #1 holy grail over here. But it is doable, so definitely play around with it and see what you like. And I think that is it. So in the kits that I sell, I include a fresh piece of leather and a fresh polishing compound that comes in a little baggie. So this piece of leather has been used for many years, but it's still going strong. And then same with this polishing compound here. I've had this thing for many years and it still is in really good condition. Like, I'm convinced that one of these will last you the rest of your life. There's no need to ever go buy another one. It lasts so long. When you are polishing your nibs, like, they will get dirty over time, so polishing them is good, but you have to be careful. That's why I'm including this in this video, is because it is so important to do this part right, or else you can really F up your nibs, okay? And it even says in the pamphlet, if you read the pamphlet, I will just read this to you, okay? Okay. It says in number 6, do not clean your pen tips with a stone, wire brush, sandpaper, tea strainer, or any other harsh abrasive, as this ruins the finish and will wear out the tip prematurely. Use a rough leather or fabric strop with a bit of metal polishing compound rubbed onto it to clean off carbon deposits and keep the tip clean. Aluminum oxide polishing compound on a strop works very well, paper white in color. Wipe the pen tips only when they're cold, okay, so only when they're off, over the polish loaded strop, just enough to take only the carbon off the tip. A pen tip is clean when it reflects light. Carbon will not polish, it will stay matte. If you are seeing bright silvery metal after cleaning a tip, you are doing it wrong. Clean any excess polish debris off of the tips with a clean paper towel. Do not use excessive pressure when cleaning small and spherical tips like the writing tips, as you may strip off the oxide layer and deform the pen tip. It means you need to be delicate and gentle and go slow until you get the hang of it. It talks about a leather strop. You don't need a full-on strop. What a leather strop is something like this. Is this double-sided, it's like a paddle. This side is super smooth, like this side of your piece of leather, and then the other side is the rough side of the leather. The rough side is what you really want to use. What you need to do is you need to take your carbon or your aluminum oxide and literally just rub just a little bit. You don't need to really scrape it. You don't need to use a ton of pressure. You just need enough to get a little bit of a deposit on there. I'm going to polish this nib. As you can see, she be dirty. She has a lot of this gunk on here and she needs a little bit of a cleaning. Now, it says in the pamphlet, it is clean when it reflects light. So it is not going to take much at all to clean this, to properly clean it. Even though it may still look dark and have this dark metal to it, or this dark metal shine, it will be clean. If you keep scrubbing it and keep polishing it and keep going until you see silver, you've stripped the oxide layering off of the nib. And that's important because that's what that's like the protective barrier between the raw metal oxide layer and the carbon. You don't want to scrub that off, even though you're gonna look at it and be like, oh, but it's still dirty. No, it's not. Don't keep going. All right. So anyway, I am just going to lightly start rubbing it on this area. You can go back and forth a little bit. You might be able to see that this area is tarnishing a little bit. And I'm not pushing down hard at all. I'm just literally like lightly rubbing, okay? And now let's look at it. Oh, look at that, she be clean. If anything, it could use a little bit more on this point here. Let me do that. Let me see if I can just get, so the way I'm gonna do that is put it up on its tip and just kind of lightly, you don't want to use too much pressure because you don't want to bend it. Obviously that's not good, and you can snap it right off. Let's see. There's still a little bit of gunk here at the end. Let me just do one more little pass, very gently. I don't know if that's any better, but I'm gonna stop there because the whole thing does reflect light. So it's clean now, we're good. So when you're doing that with your different nibs, you just want to pay attention. You don't want to go too far, and you don't want to overdo it. If anything, it's better to underdo it than overdo it. And then another thing with the stippling nib, that ballpoint nib, when you go to polish it, I like to twist it as I go, because you don't want to wear down only one side of the sphere. You want to polish the whole thing, so you need to turn it as you go. Or you can hold it and kind of like sandwich the leather around it and twist. It's kind of clunky, and that might be easier for you. But oh yeah, you can see where it just polished there in the middle. But regardless, if you're doing it flat, I just kind of like to turn it as I'm going. Shiny on all sides, and now it is good to go. So that's how you polish these things. So now that I have covered that, now it is time to do just a little bit of burning with these various nibs. I'm just gonna work on this one mushroom, okay? The first thing I'm gonna do is turn my unit on, right? I'm holding my nib so it doesn't burn anything, turning it on, and I am gonna start at like a 7.5. If I feel like I need to go hotter, or if I want to go faster, I will just turn this up a little bit, and I will just keep adjusting my temperature little bit by little bit until I get to a point where I feel comfortable. It's not too hot or it's not too slow. So let's just go to like a 7.5. I am going to do the outline of the mushroom with this nib because I think, in my opinion, it's really nice for outlines because it gives you a nice thick line. Okay, so I feel like that's too hot. If you touch down on your wood and you get this brown halo, you see that? There's like a ring, a halo around my Woodburn line. That usually means you're too hot. So I'm gonna turn it down to like a 6.5. And I'm gonna keep going. I am touching down on the wood. Okay, so I'm still getting a little bit of that halo, but it's not nearly as bad, so I'm gonna stick with that. I'm touching down on the surface of the wood with the entire surface area of the nib. And as I go, you can see that I don't do the whole thing in one pass. I kind of will piece together my lines, and when I'm burning, I don't start and stop. I feel like that gives me a very patchy line. I like to overlap on the previous wood burned section so it kind of blends together. Does that make sense? So I kind of just go over the part that I just did to make sure that my lines are seamless. Another thing that I'm doing is I am turning my wood and my nib as I go. It is so much easier to just turn the wood to get at a new section, a new angle, rather than trying to turn your hand all kinds of different directions. Just turn the wood. See how I combined those two by layering? I just think it smooths it out. Okay, let me do this part. And then I have a couple of little curves here, so I'm going to put my nib up on the point and twist to get the different curves. And then I just kind of go over any areas that need to be touched up or look a little choppy. Again, I have it up on its point, and watch my fingers because I'm turning it ever so slightly. Okay. I'm gonna do the base stem. I'm back to touching down on the wood with the full surface area of the nib. And you'll notice that I am pulling my nib. I never push my nib. I always pull it towards me. So if that means that I have to turn my wood so I'm still pulling it towards me, that's what I do. I never push my nib away from me. I don't know, that's just me. Not everyone does it like that, but that's how I do it. I feel like I have a lot of control when I'm pulling it towards me. So that's that. I'm gonna do this part here. Cool. So when you go to plug a nib in, you know, you have your nib, you plug it in, but like the connection to the unit, that is not all the way plugged in. You need to cover up this whole part here. So you have to push it all the way down. And it doesn't click, right? There is no click or snapping noise. It just, like, once you can't push it anymore, that's when it's connected all the way. If you're not getting a burn, or maybe your burn is off and on, it could be because this is so loose and it's just kind of wobbling, right? Like, it's just loose. So you really gotta, there you go. So anyway, then when you go to swap out to a different nib, this is hot. It'll take, I don't know, 30 seconds or so for it to cool down. So you can either put it in the clip that's on the top of your unit, right? You can put it there so it doesn't roll away. Or you can just put it off to the side if you know that your burning area space is safe. And I'm going to switch to a new nib. I'm going to freehand the underside gills of this mushroom. It'll look something like that, but I'm just gonna freehand it with my large skew nib. I am going to start off to the side, and you can see that I am not touching the wood with the entire nib. I have it up on its point, and it is just slicing through the wood like butter. To get the slight curves, the slight curvature of the lines, you can see that I'm like curving and twisting the nib a little bit as I go. Like, I'm keeping my wrist anchored and just moving my hand and my fingers, not my wrist. You can obviously see the size difference of the thickness of this line compared to the thickness of the outline from that burnishing nib. They are totally different. And now you can probably see why I love this nib so much, because those lines are so crisp. They're so good. Okay, now I'm gonna go in to the stem of my mushroom and freehand some of my like shading details. Okay, this is just kind of my own personal style. I am going to demonstrate how I would outline these little dots with this nib. So when I am doing like a circle, I have to piece it together. I cannot do the full circle in one motion. I will do section, turn the wood, section, turn the wood, and every time I do a new section of my circle, I am just using the finger twisting motion to twist the blade. Okay, so that's about as much as I can do in that range of motion. And now I need to turn the wood. And I will do a new section, turn the wood, new section, turn the wood, new section. One thing that I've learned is to do all of the same direction of whatever it is you're doing while your hand is already at that angle. So I just did all of the curves that I can reach from this angle, and then I will turn the wood and then do it again. But it's really useful if you're doing like a window, like I've done a couple of building portraits where there were a bunch of windows, so I just did all the vertical parts of all the windows, and then I turned the piece and did all the horizontal parts of the windows, and I pieced it together because it just saves you a little bit of time from like line, turn, line, turn, line, you know, just do everything that's going that direction at that time. That's just a little time saver tip for you. So that is done. I feel like they're looking pretty good. I'm not too worried about them being perfect because what I'm doing now is I am going in with my ballpoint nib, okay? And I am going to stipple each dot full of little dots to create a really fun texture. Stippling usually takes a high heat, but I'm gonna turn mine down to a 7 because I'm working in such small spaces. And stippling is just a bunch of dots touching each other to create like a fill. This is what I mean. Bunch of little dots, and I overlap them. I don't leave any white space between them. And I am filling the whole area. I love the physical texture of stippling. Okay, so shading is, I think it's always better to start low, start at a lower heat, because you can go over an area more than once to build up the darkness. But if you start super dark, you can't go lighter. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna turn my heat down to a 3, right? I just turned the dial down from a 7.5 to a 3, and that might actually still be a little too hot. So I like having my little cork pad here because I can kind of test before I commit to the wood, and I'm gonna turn it down. I'm gonna turn it down to like a 2.5. Now, of course, the cork burns at a different temperature than the wood, but this just kind of gives me a ballpark. So anyway. Okay, so I think that that's too slow, too cool for the wood, so I'm going to turn it back up to a 3. And when I am burning, I am not wanting to shade the whole area here. I am wanting to do a little bit of a gradient along the edge of where the inside of the underside of the mushroom cap is tucked under. So I have my nib kind of up on its point, not totally on its point, but not completely flat either. I have it up a little bit, and I touch down along the outline of where I want the start of the shade to be, and then I lightly kind of touch down, pull it, and wisp it off the wood. I'm on the tip of it, touch down, and I kind of wisp it off. So that's giving me a burn, but I still think that that's a little too slow, so I'm gonna go up to a 3.5. You see what I mean? Like, it's always better to start low than to start too hot. So I'm touching down and I'm wisping away. See, it's definitely burning darker on the cork. Let me turn it up to a 4. I just feel like it's going a little too slow for me. I want to go a little bit faster, and I don't want to have to do so many layers. I'm going to go up to a 4.5. I hope that this is helpful for you, watching how I actually do it and hearing me like talk you through why I do what I do. All right, now I try to mirror all of that on the other side. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit under this part. That is the Optima, and these are the 4 nibs. Just to give a quick review, we went over the burner, what it does. We went over the 4 nibs, the burnishing nib, the shader nib, the skew nib, and the ballpoint nib. And I gave demonstration on what they do and how I use them for the most part. And then I also talked about how we, polish. How we polish the nibs and how you can go too far and you don't want to do that. I hope that this was super helpful for you. Let me know if you have any questions about anything that I did or talked about or demonstrated. I have all the links to everything that I've used and shown in the video description. I will also have a link to my wood that my husband makes. So we are also we are also woodworkers, and we make all of my pieces of wood, and we also sell them to other wood burners in the community. So, you know, you can find really nice panels, you can find wood slices, you can find ornaments, all sorts of stuff. So a link to that will be in the description as well. And then we also have a wood burning subscription group where I do free tutorials and different things every month. And then everyone in there also gets a 20% off coupon. It's a permanent discount to use on anything in our wood burning section of our website. So you get a permanent 20% off discount on all your orders and everything. Links to all of that will be below. If you are interested in any other wood burning templates, I do have an Etsy shop that has all kinds of wood burning templates, and then I also have them available on our website as well. Okay, I think that's it. Let me know if you have any questions at all. Feel free to drop any comments or hit me up, send me a DM on Facebook or Instagram. Instagram is better because I'm always on Instagram and I hate Facebook. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I hope that this was super helpful, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!